Hi and welcome or welcome back to The Books Are Everywhere. So today we're going to be going through my anticipated releases for January to the end of March 2022. So this is the first quarter of the year. I'm hoping I will be able to do these every quarter of the year, which I miserably failed at last year, but I'm trying to be more on top of things this year. Obviously we are a little bit into the month already, so some of these will be a little bit backlist now, because there is a couple that have already come out. And just a note before we start that some of these release dates might be a little bit inaccurate depending on where you live. I think these are the American release dates, but I think they all have the same month. Even if the release date is a little bit off, they are definitely released within the month that I tell you they're released in, but they might just be a little bit out or a couple of days out. But yeah, we're going to start from the start of the year and go through to the end of March, and then I will do another one that is April onwards, and then there'll be another one later in the year and another one to finish off the year. That is the plan. But yeah, let's dive into this video and I'll tell you what my first anticipated release is of the year. So I haven't actually picked this one up yet because I'm being very careful about what I'm buying at the moment. But my first book of the year is Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Lindhan. This one looks absolutely stunning and I just absolutely love the cover. I will put all of the covers here for you. And I have a release date of January 11th, which I think is America, and I think the UK release date is January 20th, so not quite out yet as I'm filming this one. But this one sounds absolutely amazing. So it's about somebody who grows up on the moon and is unaware that she's being hidden from the feared celestial emperor who exiled her mother for stealing the elixir of immortality. So it sounds like this is about magic. There's magic involved, there's a lot of family involved. Obviously this is about a relationship with the main character's mother as well. And it just sounds amazing. I'm very intrigued by the fact that it's set on the moon. I am not sure how I feel about it being, it sounds like a very fantasy-based novel, but it's actually set in a kind of celestial environment. But the magic sounds amazing and it sounds very fantasy-based, less than like a space opera, more of like a fantasy. That's the kind of vibes that I'm getting from this one. I've already heard good things about this one on pre-release. I've seen a lot of proofs floating around and very excited to finally pick it up myself. And then we have Weather Girl by Lynn Sullivan, which is released on January 11th or maybe the 13th if you are also in the UK. This one is one I'd never have really been drawn to or picked up myself, but my friend Sophie is a massive fan of Lynn Sullivan and she's talked a lot about this book in the run-up to release. I know that she really loved this one and it's really drawn me to it because seeing it on her Instagram all the time, she's Mind of a Book Dragon on Instagram by the way, but seeing it on her Instagram has just made me really want to read it. And this one follows Ari Abrams, who is a TV meteorologist, and she wants to kind of move on in her job and move up in her job, but her boss, who is legendary Seattle weatherwoman Torrance Hale, is too distracted by her relationship with her ex-husband to give her the kind of mentorship that she needs. And the only person that seems to understand what she's going through is the reserved sports reporter Russell Barringer. So in the aftermath of a disastrous holiday party, Russell and Ari actually decide to team up to solve their boss's relationship issues, but between secret gifts and double dates, they start nudging their bosses back together. But their well-meaning meddling backfires when there is real chemistry between Ari and Russell. This one actually sounds like a Netflix film that I've seen, which I think is called Set It Up, which was a lot of fun. It's very, very similar in the fact that it's about these two kind of interns trying to get their bosses to date and they end up building a kind of relationship themselves, have chemistry between themselves. But this one sounds super interesting, super cute. I love that it's between a meteorologist and a sports reporter. That just sounds really, really interesting, and it sounds like it's around their kind of personalities as well. So yeah, this one I wouldn't necessarily pick up if it wasn't for Sophie, but it sounds really interesting and I know that she loves it, so that's made me want to read it too. And we're into February, and the first one of February is actually released on February 1st, but I think it might be the 3rd in the UK, and that is This Woven Kingdom by Tahara Mafi. This one sounds so cool. I've read some of Tahara Mafi's books and I found them a little bit hit and miss, but I actually have a proof copy of this one that I'm going to be reading in January, so I'm very excited for the release of this one and to see how I feel about it. So it basically is following Eliza, who is a disposable servant to the rest of the world, but she's actually a long-lost heir to an ancient Jin kingdom, forced to hide in plain sight as a servant. But it also follows the Crown Prince Cameron, and he has heard the prophecies foretelling the death of his king. But he could never have imagined that the servant girl with the strange eyes, the girl that he can't put out of his mind, would one day soon uproot his kingdom and the world. So this one sounds like a fantasy romance. I think it's the start of a new series. Very excited to read the proof copy before it's released in February. And the next one will come as no surprise, and that is House of Sky and Breath, which is the second book in the Crescent City series by Sarah J Maas. I read the first book in this series in August 2021, so I'm hoping I will be able to dive straight into House of Sky and Breath in February when it comes out, and this one is released on February 15th. I think there's an international release date because I know it does have an embargo, so February 15th is its international release date everywhere. And the first book in this series, the Crescent City series, is called House of Earth and Blood, and this was released, I think it was released 2 years ago now, in 2020, and it follows a half-fae, half-human called Bryce, who is loving her life. She parties all the time, and then her world is kind of rocked by this brutal murder that shakes the foundations of the city, and it is a murder of one of her closest friends. So she is then protected by a fallen angel, Hunt, who kind of comes into the story, and Bryce and Hunt try and fight to unravel the mystery of the murders that have been going on and kind of get to know each other better in the process. This one is my least favourite Sarah J Maas series so far, but I'm very excited to see where House of Sky and Breath goes, as I was getting into the story kind of late in the second half of House of Earth and Blood, so I'm hoping that that one kind of follows on in House of Sky and Breath. And the next book I have a release date for of February 22nd, and I think that is a worldwide release date as well, and that is The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea by Axio. I'm so excited for this book. It is one of the very, very few books I actually have on pre-order this year. I think I only have 4 or 5 books on pre-order, some of which I will obviously be talking about in this video. And I actually read a book by Axio last year, which I think was her debut, and that was Xoxo, which I absolutely loved, but sounds very, very different from this one. That was a contemporary K-pop romance, whereas this one is a fantasy, and I'm very excited to see how Axio writes a fantasy. And this one follows Mina, who lives in a world where there is flooding which sweeps away entire villages. Her people believe in the sea god, and once a year they actually give up a beautiful maiden to serve as the sea god's bride, in the hopes one day the true bride will be chosen to end all suffering. And many believe that Shim Chong is the most beautiful girl in the village, and she may be the legendary true bride, but she's actually the beloved of Amina's older brother. But the night that she is going to be sacrificed to the sea god, June, who is Mina's older brother, follows her out to sea and knows that to interfere is a death sentence. And to save her brother, Mina also follows herself into the water. So they're actually all swept away to the spirit realm, which is a magical city of lesser gods and mythical beasts. And here Mina seeks out the sea god, only to find him caught in an enchanted sleep. With the help of a mysterious young man named Shin, as well as a motley crew of demons, gods and spirits, Mina sets out to wake the sea god from this sleep and bring the end to killer storms once and for all. But she doesn't have much time. A human cannot live in the land of the spirits, and there are those who would do anything to keep the sea god from waking. So this one sounds super interesting. The proofs are so pretty. I wish I'd managed to get my hands on one, but I didn't. But I'm very excited for the release of this one. And we're going into March, and the first book I want to talk about is my most anticipated release of the year. And it will probably come as no surprise that this is Gallant by V Schwab, and this is being released on the 1st of March. I obviously have multiple editions of this book on pre-order. The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue is my favourite book ever, so this is the next book by V Schwab, which I am incredibly excited for. And this one is following 17-year-old Olivia Pryor, who is missing a mother, a father and a voice. Her mother vanished all at once, her father by degrees, and her voice was a thing she never had to start with. She grew up in a school for girls, and now nearing the end of her time there, Olivia receives a letter from an uncle that she's never met, her father's older brother, who summons her to his estate, a place called Gallant. But when she arrives, she discovers the letter was received several years ago. Her uncle is dead. The estate is empty, save for the servants. Olivia is permitted to remain, but must follow the rules. Don't go out after dusk. Always stay on the right side of the wall that runs along the estate's western edge. Beyond it is another realm, ancient and magical, which calls to Olivia through her blood. So this one sounds very, very different from Eddie LaRue, and I think V Schwab has said a lot about that herself, but I'm incredibly excited for it. I love V Schwab's writing, and I feel like she does bring out such fresh and interesting stories that are very different to things that she's written before, so I'm very excited for this one. I feel like her writing is definitely going to be reminiscent, and I'm very excited to read something new by her. And then we have a book that I'm sure you've all heard of, which also has a release date of March 1st, and that is The Atlas 6, and this comes out on March 1st as well. This one was a self-published book that went viral on TikTok and has since achieved a kind of more traditional publication and is going to be published on March 1st. So this one does have a very, very long synopsis, so I will try and keep this one brief, but as far as I know, it is a dark academia book and it follows 6 young magicians who have the chance of a lifetime. 6 are chosen, but only 5 will walk away. So they go to the Alexandrian Society, which is a secret society of magical academians, the best in the world. Their members are caretakers of lost knowledge from the greatest civilizations of antiquity, and those who earn a place among their number will secure a life of wealth, power and prestige beyond their wildest dreams. Each decade, the world's 6 most uniquely talented magicians are sent for initiation, and there's a chosen few. So I think they go through some kind of like game. 5 are told that they will be initiated and 1 will be eliminated, and then they have to prove themselves to be the best to survive. This one sounds super interesting. I've heard nothing but good things about it. I know it's had a lot of hype and I'm hoping to pre-order a copy soon. And the next book I want to talk about is Good Intentions, and this is released on March 8th. This one I've actually had a proof copy of for a while. I'm hoping to read it before release date, and it just sounds really, really interesting, and I just wanted to pick up the proof copy when it came in. Honestly sounds kind of reminiscent of The Big Sick, which is a movie that I've seen most of and really, really enjoyed when I did watch it. And it's following a young British Pakistani man who is on New Year's Eve and is steeling himself to tell his parents that he's seeing somebody. So Noor is in love with somebody that he met at college at a house party. They've fallen in love very deeply, but he needs to face his parents and tell them the truth. Yasmina is black and he loves her. I feel like I remember seeing something about how this actually includes a sickness, which is I think why it reminded me of The Big Sick, but it also might just be kind of the like relationship between the parents and the people who are dating. Maybe that's what reminded me of it, I am not sure, but I'm looking forward to reading this one. It's quite a short book and I'm hoping to read it before the release. And the next book on this list is Wrath and Mercy by Jessica Rubinkowski, and this is the sequel to The Bright and the Pale, which I've actually read last year, and these are absolutely beautiful books. I have a release date of this one for March 22nd, but I think the UK release date might be slightly later. It might actually fall into April, but I'm very excited to see where this series goes. I'm hoping to reread the first book in preparation for this one because I listened to it on audiobook and I feel like I will get more from reading it physically. And the first book actually follows 17-year-old Valeria, who was one of the only survivors of the freeze, which was a dark magical hold where she lived that was unleashed on her village. So everyone, including her family, was trapped in an unbreakable sheet of ice, but she survived. So ever since, she's been on the run from the Tsar, who has set out to imprison anyone who managed to escape the freeze. So Valeria finds refuge with the Thieves Guild, doing odd jobs with her best friend, who is the only piece of home that she has left. And then her best friend is brutally murdered. A year later, she discovers that her best friend was actually not murdered and is alive and being held captive. To buy his freedom, she must lead a group of cutthroats and thieves on a perilous expedition to the very mountain that claimed her family. Only something sinister slumbers in the heart of the mountain, and it has waited for years to release. So I did really enjoy the first one, but I feel like I will get more from it on a reread, especially if I read it physically, and then I will be able to go on to the second one, which I'm very excited for. And the penultimate book on this list is Message Not Found, and I actually found this one on an email from a publishing company, which was Harper, I believe. Harper360 sent me an email about this one, and it sounds super, super interesting. And this follows Bailey and Vanessa, who shared everything until Vanessa left Bailey's one night, headed for home and ended up swerving off a cliff nowhere near her house. Now Bailey, who thought she knew Vanessa better than anyone else in the world, is left with a million unanswered questions, and the only person with answers is gone. So to help grieve her loss, Bailey creates a chatbot of Vanessa using years worth of their shared text messages and emails, and the more data that she uploads to this chatbot, the more she feels like she's actually talking to her best friend. That is until the bot actually starts dropping hints that there was more going on with Vanessa than Bailey ever realised, a secret so big it could have actually contributed to her death. This one sounds so interesting. It reminds me a lot of Hideous Beauty by William Hussey, which follows a very similar situation where one of them is lost in a car accident and the other one is kind of left to kind of find out what happened and figure out what happened. But yeah, it sounds very, very interesting. I love the cover of this one so much. I have applied for a proof copy of it. Not sure if I'll get it, but I think I want to pre-order it anyway because it sounds so interesting. And the last book on this list is Always Jane by Jen Bennett, which is set to release on March 29th. I think that is a US release date. I'm not sure if this one actually has a UK release, but I love Jen Bennett. I used to read a lot, well, I read a few Jen Bennett books years ago, and I actually read Serious Moonlight last year, and it reminded me of how much I still love her writing. So even though I wouldn't necessarily be drawn to her books now, because I love her writing so much, I can't wait for this one. I didn't know she had a new book on release this year, but I actually saw this on a list when I was compiling this video, and I'm really excited for this one now. I don't know if I'll be able to get it in the UK or if I'll have to find an American edition, but I am looking forward to reading it. And this one's called Always Jane, and it follows Jane Marlowe, who grew up kind of amongst the domestic staff of a wealthy LA rock producer, within reaches of bands that she idolises but never a VIP. So every summer Jane and her father head to the Sierras to work at the producer's luxury lodge in Lake Condor, a resort town which is the site of a major music festival. So there's a legendary family that runs this music festival, and Jane has had a crush on their eldest son Eddie for as long as she can remember. So in this book, a long-distance romance finally sparks between them, and she doesn't hesitate to cross class lines to be in this relationship. But Jane's feelings are thrown into question after she returns to the lake and reconnects with his alluringly intense brother, the dark horse of her placid summer plans. A fellow lover of music and hater of the game, Fen has been ousted from the family and is slumming it at a vinyl record shop. He burns for Jane like a house on fire and will do anything to sabotage his older brother, even if it means taking a wrecking ball to a multi-million-dollar music festival or Jane's heart. This one sounds very drama-filled. I remember reading Serious Moonlight last year by the same author and remembering that she has this kind of edge to her romance writing, and something interesting is always going on in the background, which is really interesting. I feel like romance and contemporary books need to have some kind of edge and interest to them now for me to want to pick them up, but I do love Jen Bennett's writing, so I'm very excited to try and get my hands on a copy of that one. And that brings me to the end of this video. I feel like I'm not the best at kind of trying to summarise books I haven't read, so I hope it's been okay. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please comment down below and let me know which books you're excited for in the first quarter of the year, and I'll see you next time with another video. Bye!